Welcome in, everyone, to the Optimus NFL show. I am your host, Brad Bolt, and joining me, as always, my good friend, Dan O'Connell. Dan, how are we?
Brad, it is good to be back recording another episode and actual NFL games to be talking about now.
Oh, it was amazing. We were just talking off air how we both happened to be up at 2 a.m. for 2:30 a.m. ready for the games, and feeling it more today than we did yesterday. But it was good fun to get back up and get back in the swing of it. And there was some absolute cracking games on this weekend too.
The thing, I don't have to get up early in the morning or as early as normal now because I've got a new job and I start a bit later. But you get to Monday morning on that first NFL week and you're up way before you've set your alarms just from the excitement of it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a bit the same. Didn't even set an alarm because I just had faith in my body that it was going to wake me up in time, and lo and behold, it did. I had a full half an hour to spare before the games actually started, so I
I
was
was
able to
lucky to
get
even
in
get
early.
sleep before. You're
It
just sitting
was
there
a bit
waiting,
like,
setting all your fantasy lineups ready to go, and then you're
yeah,
sitting there going, well, should get to bed, I guess.
yeah, it was pretty much it. So now, what we are going to do in this episode today is we're just going to recap the games that were played for week one. We're not going to spend a lot of time on some of these because it's really hard at the start of the season for the first probably 3 to 4 weeks to actually gain an understanding of how the league's going to play out, because a lot of these teams don't play their starters for very long. So the whole concept of starters, this is sort of like their preseason still. So we're going to wait a few weeks. But just a quick recap on our bets from last week. So Dan's best bets for the touchdown winners, he actually had 5 out of the we picked, it was 11 in the end. So Dan went 5 for 11 and I went 2 for 11. So Dan did a lot better than myself this week. Uh, so my 2 bets that I got were Isaiah Pacheco and Lamar Jackson for touchdowns, but with all of the units that we would have spent, I made about a nearly 2.5 unit loss on the week. But that's all right. We'll win that back as the season goes on. Dan, however, he with his 5, so he got Xavier Worthy, Derrick Henry, Isaiah Likely from the first game. So you started off 3 from 3, and that was just something where it was like, okay, well, if you got to have this success rate, we've just got to follow you all season long. Rounded it out with Aaron Jones and James Conner. So Dan is actually up 7.34 units week 1 of the season. So that's a solid start by Dan, and you'd be stoked if you can manage to carry that through the season.
We'll take that, especially like we said, first week, a lot of random stuff can happen. You don't know what you're going to get from a lot of players because they haven't played yet, basically, through the preseason. So you're just kind of hoping for the best in week 1 and then you build from there.
And speaking of week 1, this just might show how in lockstep Dan and myself are. So we gave out touchdown scorers for every game, one from each team, through the Sunday games and the Monday night football game. Dan, you managed to get 9 correct. No, you picked 9 correct touchdown scorers. I looked at mine and I counted it up. I had 9 correct touchdown scorers. So between us, we had 18 correct touchdown scorers there. So that just showed one thing. We were exactly dead the same there. So then I thought to
Not a bad
myself, well,
effort.
not a bad effort. And then I thought to myself, well, let's go check our picks pool that we did, because we're obviously doing that. We're competing week in, week out. So I am currently tied for top with 13 out of 16 correct guesses. And then I looked at who's second, and Dan, you are currently tied for first with 13 correct guesses. So we managed to somehow end up with the same number of touchdown scorers and the same number of correct guesses. So this just shows though how we look at this game, how we've looked at everything. We've both come to the exact same with touchdown scorers and the wins in the pick and pull. So,
And the amount we actually talk during the week, obviously, everything NFL related, we don't actually talk about who we're picking as much. And we definitely
no,
didn't talk about our touchdown scorers before we actually started recording. So, yeah, we talk a heap during the week when we're not recording, obviously, but those, like the picks, weren't spoken about. We talk about the games, but we're not talking about who we're actually picking at that point. Because,
Mm,
like you said, we're competing against each other.
yeah.
We're out to beat each other, so I'm not giving you who I'm tipping until the show.
No, exactly. And that's why when I was looking at some of them, I was like, we've got to have a few different here and there because we really need to see who's going to come out on top. And of course, the ones that we had different always ended up being the ones where the opposite. So, like, you had Baltimore, I had Kansas City, I had the Steelers, you had the Falcons in our pick, but then like I stupidly had the Panthers and you had the Saints because you were a lot smarter than I was. So
But the
just little
logic
things
behind
like
the
that.
Panthers pick was there, to be honest. The
Yeah,
logic behind the Panthers pick was there, and then they came out and played, and the
yeah.
Panthers kind of forgot to come out to play.
I was going to say
So,
the game started leading into it. I was like, do you know what? I think they can do this. I think they can do this. And then after about 6 minutes into the first quarter, I sat there and I actually sent you a message. I was like, I think maybe I might just go back to bed because this is just depressing. This game, and that was only in the first quarter. And I was like, oh, this is going to be in for a long
could
season.
you imagine if we didn't have Red Zone and you were forced just to watch one game and it was a Panthers game as a fan? Like, you
Well,
just give up and go, I'm not watching.
I set up everything in my study where I'm recording, and that way I could watch the games without waking up the rest of the family while I was awake. And I started off with the Panthers game on the big computer screen. I had Red Zone on my laptop screen. And after the Rashid Shaheed touchdown and then Bryce Young's first pass where he threw an interception and then they scored again, I swapped them over and Red Zone went on the big screen and the Panthers game went on the small screen. And then in the end, I just sort of, as the touchdowns kept coming, I just abandoned the Panthers game altogether and just went Red Zone all the way.
You figure if we're going to get some Panthers highlights, it'll be on Red Zone, so we'll just keep it on that.
Well, there were highlights, but they were Saints highlights. Like the Panthers were in them, but they were just watching the guys
Your team
stroll
was
into
coming
the
up
end
on
zone.
Red Zone, just not for a good
Yeah,
play.
yeah, exactly. Well, what we'll do is, since we're just talking about that one, we'll just start there. Saints 47, Panthers 10. There is nothing really to report from this game whatsoever. Derek Carr had his best game for a long time. The Panthers were atrocious. And to me, it's one of those games where if you were the coach, you've got to decide, do we actually sit and harp on this game, or is this just a completely let's throw this out and try and forget that it ever happened and move on to next week? Because I'm of that thinking that maybe that's what we actually do. You would actually do there if you were Carolina. It's like I'm not going to delve too much into this game. It was atrocious all around. There's nothing good that came out of it. So I would just move on to the next week and forget that this even happened.
Yeah, and obviously, first year head coach Dave Canales, it's not the way he's wanting to start. And like you said, I don't think he can harp on about it because what's he going to say? Like, you don't want
Mm,
to sit there and just be negative non-stop. And as much as they're not going to have much positive to take out of it, you just sit there and go, okay, week one's over with. Let's just move on, put the game plan in place for week two, and just look to get improvement each week because the Panthers are going to be another year where we all know they're going to be in the conversation for the number one pick. But
mm.
as the head coach and as your team, you're just going to want to keep trying to put step by step, getting better and not getting worse and staying stagnant. So just move on to week two. Hope you put out a better performance than that and just keep building from there.
And I think that was the good thing that Dave Canales actually said at the end of the game was when he had his podium. Like he obviously knew that a lot of Panthers fans were going to be very disappointed, but he said, like, hey, this isn't a quick thing. You don't usually turn teams around within a season or two. So look, it was an unmitigated disaster last season with Frank Reich and that coaching staff. There is nothing that came out of it. You know that it's bad too when literally everyone is gone. Like it was one season. Some guys were gone before the season even ended. That's how bad it was. Like, so it's a brand new coaching staff. It's a new philosophy that they're trying to go with here. So yeah, throw it all out the window. Just be prepared that this is going to be a very long, disappointing, sad season.
Yeah. And the game plan was never allowed to be balanced either. And that obviously
No.
affects Bryce Young and how he plays and that offensive line as well. So, yeah, like you said, there's absolutely nothing to take out of this that's positive other than you got to the end of the game without injuries, like major injuries, and just move on to next
Mm.
week.
Yep, that's pretty much it. So that's one game down and dusted. Now I don't have to worry about that for the rest of the game, rest of this week. So we'll go to, like I said, we'll breeze through some of these because some of these we won't have too much to say because it is so early. First one is Steelers versus Falcons. Not very often that a game with only one offensive touchdown is a team who loses. Um, and the Falcons had the one touchdown, which was Kyle Pitts, and then Chris Boswell came and had 6 field goals and won the game for the Steelers. Is there anything that you would like to add to any of that, Dan?
I think the biggest takeaway from me is the fact that Kirk Cousins does not look even close to being
No.
healthy enough to be out there as far as I'm concerned. He just did not look comfortable at all.
I saw a stat that said that he had 0 snaps from under center the
Yeah.
entire game. And you could just
Like,
see in the bits that I was seeing that were coming up and what I've tried to watch in the meantime since. So just we're just recording this on Tuesday night, the 10th of September. Look, it was one of those things that he didn't look, like you said, he didn't look healthy, but he was just not mobile. He couldn't take any steps. He just
yeah.
didn't step up in the pocket. Just didn't look good. Just didn't look. He looked like, and that's why. And I was so bummed when we nearly had multiple times where there was a TJ Watt strip sack or interceptions or whatever, because that was one of my touchdown scorers. But that was my fear going into it, was that Kirk just wasn't ready.
Yeah. And if you've got that sort of doubt in your own mind as a quarterback, going up against one of the top defensive players in the league in TJ Watt is
Mm,
not going to be a recipe for success. And we saw it play
no.
out that way. So obviously, you get that first game out of the way for Cousins, and you kind of hope, obviously, that he's looking better next week. But yeah, a lot of things to be concerned about there for the Falcons and for Cousins especially. So he's got a big week two ahead of him, I think, because we all know they spent pick 8 on Michael Penix Jr. If Cousins has another game like this where he just doesn't look healthy and doesn't look like he can move, I don't know if they can keep playing him until he gets back to that point where you have full trust in him.
Mm,
So it's
yeah.
a tough spot for them to be in. So we'll see what happens this week. And it could have just been a one off and he just needed that game under his belt now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What we'll do is let's breeze through some of these games that we don't really have too much to say about. So the next one I was going to say is the Patriots versus Bengals. So Patriots win 16-10. Look, I don't have too much to add to this. The Bengals always seem to lose week 1 lately since Joe Burrow's got there. Jamar Chase, weren't sure whether he was playing. T. Higgins was out. It was just a really bad, sloppy game all around. I think there's a bit of, getting used to Joe Burrow with his wrist injury. So that's all I put that down. So I still think the Bengals could be a pretty good team this season, but this game didn't really give me anything that I could, I guess, hang my hat on and think that, okay, this is what this season's going to be like. I just think it was once again one of those weird week 1 results, and it is what it is.
Yeah, obviously, people are picking Patriots to be one of the worst teams in the league.
Mm,
Like, lucky to get sort of 5-6 wins this year. I don't think even with Jamar Chase and his contract holdout or dispute and then illness and everything else, and is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And then not having T Higgins as well. I still don't think we really expected the Bengals to look this poor. But
no,
again, like you said, they have a habit of starting slow, and I don't think there's a lot to take out of this game for them. Obviously, they may get T. Higgins back next week. Jamar Chase obviously should be fully healthy with that illness that he may or may not have actually had, depending on
Yeah.
what you want to think. But yeah, I think week 2 we'll actually see what to expect from the Bengals a lot more. And obviously the loss of Joe Mixon as well is a bit of an adjustment to make. So, but Zach Moss had his moments. I just think, yeah, I don't think we expected the Patriots to come out and look that, gosh, I won't say good because they didn't look good, but I guess that
Have
decent
that
on defense to
performance.
stop them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just one of those ones where if you're the Bengals, you go, yeah, we start slow. Seems to be the case
Yeah.
all the time. We'll still be in the playoff hunt.
Yep. Next game for a team that is also vying with Carolina in that horrible who might have the first pick sort of discussion. The New York Giants lose to the Minnesota Vikings 28-6. Sam Darnold looked like maybe one of the best quarterbacks in the league to start that game off. And to me, as per normal, like it didn't come as a shock that Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson looked really good because we both had them as touchdown scorers, and it wasn't really a surprise to me. I know Jefferson's stats weren't huge, but 4 receptions, 59 yards, and a touchdown, but it just, it's not a surprise to me that they played as well as they did. Well, sorry, it's a surprise to me that Sam Darnold played as well as he did, but for Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson, it wasn't a shock at
Yeah.
all for them to see them play the way they did.
Yeah, and you talk about Jefferson's stats, like 4 receptions, 59 yards, but they obviously didn't have to pass the ball a lot this game, so he wasn't going to have massive stats because they could run the ball a lot. They were forcing turnovers, so a lot of short field as well. So yeah, but Sam Darnold starting the season off with a bang, looking very good and very comfortable. So the Vikings, I had them. I think I had them winning about 7 games maybe this year. They might be pushing up towards 9, I think, if that sort of play continues. But we've seen Sam Darnold start a season off well when he was with Carolina. But in that sense, he had a lot of rushing touchdowns in that early stretch of season. So to see him doing it with the passing game was good for him. Obviously, Aaron Jones had a big game, 14 carries, 94 yards, and a touchdown. So a lot of positive there for the Vikings. You look at the Giants, though, and where do they go from here? Daniel Jones, again, just did not look good at all. If he's playing for his Giants career this year, which I think he is, it's not the way you want to start because
Nah.
they're going to be in that position to pick a quarterback early next year, and you have to think that that's top of their list now.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of this stuff later in the season, but at the moment, the way that it's planning out, this is probably not one of the years where you'd expect a quarterback to go in the top, just based on talent, like we've seen through some of the other years where, like you look last year, Caleb, Jaden, Drake May, everyone knew they were always going to be right up the top. This quarterback class at the moment, we're only very early in the college season, but it's not that same caliber. So, wrong year to be wanting a quarterback at the moment.
Yeah.
Another couple games that we can get to, which weren't too much information on. Chargers 22, Raiders 10. It's once again, I can't tell what these teams are like. It's just got to be, you've got to give them a little bit of a week. Like, the Chargers, from what I was seeing at the time, the Chargers weren't like, I wasn't sitting there thinking to myself, oh yeah, this team's incredible. But I wasn't thinking they were horrible. But you sort of look like rushing wise, this is where some of this is just insane. Like J.K. Dobbins, 10 rushes for 135 yards and 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
Is he going to do that again? I wouldn't expect it. But then you look at it, Justin Herbert, 144 yards and 1 touchdown. Like that's just not something you would expect. And then when you look at the Raiders, so if you just looked at the stats, like for the Raiders, Gardner Minshew, 25 of 33 for 257 yards and then 1 touchdown, 1 pick. You would have thought that it would have been reversed from there. So once again, it's another game where I'm not going to be able to know what these two teams are, besides the fact that the Chargers are going to want to run the ball until we've seen them for a few more weeks.
Yeah, I think we saw the blueprint of what we're going to see from the Chargers most of the season, and that's run the ball, play good defense. And
Mm,
then, I mean, where does that leave Justin Herbert as a quarterback? Because we know how good he can be. But
mm,
if he's going to be putting up, like, he had 144 yards this week, but if he's going to be putting up low 200 yards, you're paying a lot of money for a quarterback that's ultimately just a
can
big time game manager, I guess, in this
mm,
system. So obviously he's going to win games for them, and he's going to be in games where he's going to need to do a lot to pull out a win as well. So end of the day, wins are all that matters, and that's what Coach Harbaugh is going to be preaching as well. So it's going to make life very interesting as a Chargers fan now, because Jim Harbaugh has won everywhere he's gone. So can they be consistent throughout the year
yeah,
now?
yeah. Next game, which I don't know how it ended up as close as what it did, but the Broncos 20 lose to the Seahawks 26. Um, Geno Smith, 171 yards, 1 touchdown. Kenneth Walker, 103 yards rushing on 20 carries. And then in the Broncos, Bo Nix had the most amount of completions for the least amount of yards. I think I saw that in NFL history. 26 of 42 for 138 yards. So, he's not getting the ball downfield very far there. I don't think this game should have been as close as what it was. Um, I don't think that the Broncos are that great a team. I know they've got Sean Payton as their coach, but rookie quarterback with not a lot of like huge weapons and people that it's not the Caleb Williams type of weapons that he's got around him there in Denver. So yeah, Seahawks I think should have won that a little bit more comfortably than what they did, but I didn't have much really to offer on the Broncos or the Seahawks there because it was just such an odd game
Yeah,
to figure out.
we saw a poor interception from Geno Smith early on, and then, like you said, it was just a weird game. Like Bo Nix coming out of college, my concern with him, you talk about the most amount of completions for the least amount of yards. My concern with Bo Nix coming out of college was, yeah, he set like the single season record or whatever it was for completion percentage of 77% or whatever it was.
Mm,
But a lot of that was simple screen game type passes.
yeah,
And we saw that a lot again his first game of the NFL. So he can't survive playing that sort of game. And you've got Sean Payton, who's this so called offensive mastermind. But when you have someone like Drew Brees,
well,
it
and I
makes you
think
look
the
a lot
thing is
better than what
too.
you might be.
I think the thing is too that we saw like Drew Brees for the majority of his time with Sean Payton had the ability to throw the ball long when it needed to be. So as a defense, like even if Drew Brees threw 15 passes that were only 2 yards over the line of scrimmage, you knew in the back of your mind, okay, he could uncork one here if we're not paying attention and Michael Thomas is
Yeah.
free or whoever's free, Marcus Colston, whoever. Bo Nix, I don't know if he's got that a bit like, that would be the thinking. Like, does he have that ability to be able to uncork the deep ball the same way? And so that's why when Drew Brees was able to play a bit of that, just Michael Thomas set the receiving record or whatever it was that year. It was like, yeah, he caught 134 slants or whatever. But it's sort of like, well, he at the end of the day, everyone was like, okay, but it's still Drew Brees behind there. I don't think opposing defenses will have that same fear worry with Bo Nix just yet.
No, and obviously, rookie quarterback first start, you're not going to expect him to set the world on fire. But yeah, I think it'll be a tough season for the Broncos. I think they might be able to stay in a lot of games long enough where they can pull out some wins. But again, you need the running game going. They didn't really get that going this game. So you don't want to be having Bo Nix pass 42 times each week.
No. And if he's passing for 42 times every week, you want it to be for more than 138 yards or whatever.
Yeah.
Next game, which once again was not as close as what the scoreboard said. Dallas Cowboys 33, Cleveland Browns 17. It wasn't that close. Dak only threw for 179 yards. They didn't have anyone rush for more than 40 yards. Micah Parsons just felt like he was everywhere. And Deshaun Watson just did not look very good, which is sort of what we were all, was sort of the talk preseason was, is Deshaun Watson going to be the Cleveland Deshaun Watson, or is he going to be the Houston Deshaun Watson? And so far it's looking like he's the Cleveland. And I mean, it's really difficult because it is the Dallas Cowboys and they do have a really good defense, but that was just an interesting game.
Yeah, obviously Cleveland have put themselves in a major hole with Deshaun Watson. And if he's going to keep putting up performances like this, it doesn't matter how good that defense is, they're going to struggle to win games against obviously the better teams. They'll win their games against the poor teams, but yeah, Deshaun Watson just didn't look comfortable making poor decisions as well and just flat out missing throws. So
Yeah.
interesting times for Browns, and I wouldn't like to be a fan of the Browns, to be honest, for multiple reasons. So could be a tough season for them. The Cowboys, they did what they had to do, forced turnovers, played well on defense, and the offense just did what they needed to do.
Just looking at the slate of games again, there's really only a couple that I sort of want to touch on a little bit more. So I'll just give some scores for a couple of these games. Miami Dolphins win game-winning field goal 20 over the Jags 17. They came from behind on that one. Is there anything that you thought on that besides the fact that thank God for Tyreek Hill if you're a Miami Dolphins fan?
Well, thank God he was able to play in the first place, considering what happened in the lead up to the game.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, again, it was just a sloppy game, sloppy week one game for both teams. So, like I said, not a lot to take out of it. Tua threw for 338 yards. Again, Tyreek had a big game. Their running game always looks dangerous for the Dolphins, so we need to see better play from the Jaguars overall and from the Dolphins as well. They'll get click into gear, I think. So I'd expect both teams to be better next week.
I think the thing is too, if you told someone Tua's going to throw for 330 yards, Tyreek Hill's going to have 130, Jalen Waddle's going to have 100, and Devon Achane is going to have 70. You'd expect the Dolphins to put up 40 points. The fact that they only put up 20 was a bit of a shock. So I also liked the debut for the Jags of Brian Thomas Jr. I thought he played pretty well, considering Trevor Lawrence, once again, under 200 yards for him, 4 catches for Brian Thomas, but the touchdown as well, which was good to see for him. So once again, another game
in the back of the end zone.
Yeah. Once again, another weird game where you can't really take much out of it because you don't know what to take out of it, because was it just the first game of the season type of thing, or was there a bit more to it? It's just too early to tell.
Yeah.
Next one that we will discuss, Tampa Bay 37, Washington 20. Once again, I don't think it was actually as close as what the 17-point score seems like. What was really good from this was, okay, Jaden Daniels, yes, he threw only for 184 yards, but he did also have 16 carries for 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. I was just watching a couple of things back beforehand, and there was that one sack he got very lucky with where he got absolutely pummeled from behind and managed to fumble it to his offensive lineman who dived on top of it because everyone was on the backside there. But once again, it's really hard to actually pick much out from this besides the fact that, well, Baker Mayfield, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns. He played really well. Bucky Irving, 9 rushes for 62 yards was great. And then Chris Godwin had his best game for a long time with 8 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown. And Mike Evans, 5 catches, 61 yards, 2 touchdowns. So you got anything that you'd like to add on to that, Dan?
Baker Mayfield just keeps getting better and better. And we weren't sure before the season started what to expect out of him with Dave Canales leaving and if he could continue
Mm,
his level of play from last year. But it looks like he's just picked straight up where he was. And it's good to see, to be honest. I like Baker Mayfield and I like the
mm,
little bit of, I guess, not so much anymore, but that little bit of confident arrogance about him. He's got that under
yeah,
control a lot more now, and he's just got that confidence about him. So I enjoy watching him play. Bucky Irving had a good game, which I like to see. For the Commanders, like you said, Jaden Daniels, we got basically what we expected from him.
yeah,
He's going to have his moments in the passing game where it doesn't look the best, but you can see the flashes there of how good he can be.
mm,
And then on the ground, you don't want him running 16 times, but again, he's so dangerous with his legs. That's how they're going to win a
yeah.
lot of games this year. So,
I think we'll
yeah,
see that
good
a little
fun.
bit more. That I think this season we'll see him probably have more games of things of 10 to 15 rushes. I think we'll see more of those games than we'll see him under 10 rushes.
Yeah, just because of the way they're going to have to play. So,
Yeah.
as long as he can stay healthy, that's the most important thing. And he's not really sliding the best, but I think they said on the broadcast, he's doing a tumble.
Yeah.
So, they had a joke where kindergartners are going to be watching the game saying, "Oh, I can play quarterback in the NFL." But whatever gets him down to the ground and stays healthy, by all means do it. You'd want him to be doing a perfect baseball slide, but I'm sure that'll come hopefully in time.
It was more of a stop, drop, and roll than it was a slide. So um, you know, we'll see if he has some practice on that moving forward. Now we can get into a couple of the more interesting games. Uh, Arizona Cardinals lose 28 to the Buffalo Bills 34. Josh Allen, MVP candidate. He he did everything for that team. Two rushing touchdowns, a few passing touchdowns. Cardinals got out to an early lead, and they had the first return touchdown with the new dynamic kickoff rules, as they're called these days. But when you look at the actual stats of the team, it was obviously very. Uh, One of the consistent themes of this week was the surprising lack of passing yards from the quarterback. So Kyler Murray had 162 yards. That was it. 50. He also had 57 rushing yards, and James Conner had 50 rushing yards himself on 16 carries and a touchdown. Obviously, everyone was excited, hoping to see Marvin Harrison Jr. go off, but Marvin Harrison Jr. had one catch for 4 yards.
He
So that was
barely
sort
even
of
went on.
surprising. Yeah. Um, but Josh Allen was 232 yards on 18 of 23 with two touchdowns, no interceptions. James Cook had 19 rushes for 71 yards, and then Josh Allen 9 for 39 with two touchdowns. So this was a game where it's too early, obviously, in the season to say like this was a resume builder for MVP, but this is the type of MVP game that you will see from these guys who win the MVP awards. These are the types of games when, look, not everything's clicking to start with, but they manage to come back and find a way how to win. And that's exactly what Josh Allen did with the
Yeah,
Bills.
exactly. He pulled the Bills to the win there. There was not a lot going on overall for that game, and he just willed them to the finish there to pull out the win. Cardinals were, again, sloppy, but they put up points when they needed to. They just couldn't get it at the end there. So I think we'll see a lot better from Kyler Murray moving forward. And obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. will see a lot more targets, but I think the Bills made a big effort to take him out of the game. And it freed
Mm,
up Greg Dortch as well a lot. So, yeah, I don't think it's panic stations on Marvin Harrison Jr. yet, like I've seen some places, but we'll expect better
no.
from both teams, really. Good to see Keon Coleman, 4 catches, 51 yards, especially
Mm,
after we saw Xavier Worthy have a massive game for the Chiefs, touched the ball 3 times and made a massive impact.
yeah,
So many
yeah,
people were talking about, oh, the Bills traded away the pick for Worthy. It's like, well, okay, but Keon Coleman came out and had a good game. So
yeah.
let's pump the brakes on worrying about the Bills trading away that pick for Worthy because he's not going to score those touchdowns each week.
No, and I think the thing is too, you can't really compare them because they're two completely different styles of players. Like
100%.
Keon Coleman is a, use my body to box out a defender, contested catch sort of guy who doesn't get separation, who you could probably go to 10 times a game, but he might not crack 100 yards. He might be 10 catches for 78 yards. But Xavier Worthy is that type of guy who is the 3 catches for 114 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 rushes. Like that could be his sort of like that could be a really big game for him. But he could also have a lot of those games where he's 1 catch for 2 yards and that's it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
So next game that we look at here is maybe the weirdest game of the weekend. Tennessee Titans lose 17-24 to the Chicago Bears. Now, if I tell you the stats that Will Levis was going to throw for 127 yards and Caleb Williams was only going to throw for 93, you wouldn't know what to do. You'd be, okay, there's a lot of rushing yards in this. Well, no. So the Bears threw 93 passing yards for Caleb Williams. Then when you take the sacks out, he had 2 sacks for 29 yards. So his total passing for the team was 64 yards of passing offense. And their rushing offense was 22 carries for 84 yards. So they only had combined about 148 yards of offense for the game. The Titans had 127 yards passing, and then when you adjust it for sacks, down to 104, and then 140 yards rushing because of Tony Pollard's 16 carries for 82 yards. And yet, the Bears did not score 1 offensive touchdown and then managed to win by a touchdown. This is one of those weird games where when you sit and you watch it, you think, okay, the Titans have this in the bank. And then Will Levis throws one of the worst interceptions that we've seen. And if anyone goes back and watches it, watch after the pick and Will Levis on his hands and knees throwing his hands back in the air, looking to the heavens as if to say, what did I just do? That was I had no words for that.
It's one of those moments where you're carrying someone heavy and it just drops. And you know not to do it, but you can't help yourself and you chuck your foot out. For some stupid reason, you just chuck your foot out. That's what happened to Will Levis. He knew not to do it. Like, in your head, you're like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Oh, crap, I did it. What have I done? Like, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter how many times you're going to tell yourself in that moment not to do it. Something takes over and reflex just does it. And you know straight away, I stuffed up. What did I do?
Yeah.
And that was pretty much me watching that entire game, to be honest. I didn't watch it. I watched we get the Game Pass, we watched the 40 and 40.
Yeah.
Game in 40, and it's just, I don't know what to say about that Bears offense because there was nothing good about it.
No. It was,
and it's
to me,
not what you expected either, so...
No, to me, from what it was very much like, and you saw that early, the first sack on Caleb Williams. He tried the whole thing. I think he lost like 18 yards or something on that sack or 20 yards. It was very much a guy who was a rookie, who was like, I've been able to do this the last few years in college where I can run around and dodge these guys. And I might lose 4 yards going backwards, but by the time I actually get forward or get free to be able to throw the ball, I'm going to have an open receiver. But you just can't do that in the NFL. And he kept going backwards, and the guys were like, "We can catch you." And to me, watching it just looked like a guy. Like, granted, yes, he is a rookie in his first game, but it actually looked like a rookie in his first game. Like Jaden Daniels to me didn't necessarily look like a rookie the way he was playing. Caleb Williams looked like the game was too fast for him at times. Like I was watching at one stage, and when I think it was his second sack that he had, and I was just watching him, and you're just like, I'm sitting there the entire time going, like screaming at my TV, going, throw the ball away, throw the ball away, throw the ball away, and it was like he just held on to it for that beat too long, and it's like I was looking at some of his passing attempts. It just felt like he was just a tad slow on everything. which will get
Yeah,
cleaned up over time.
he's going to have to unlearn a lot of what he did in college because, like you said, he's just not going to get away with it in the NFL.
No.
And that'll take time. So, as a Packers fan, I'm obviously paying close attention to the Bears and Caleb Williams. So,
Yeah.
I'm expecting massive improvement even coming into week 2. I think the biggest thing to come out of this game was Rome Odunze injury, the MCL.
Mm.
He's now week to week, which is unfortunate because I'm a big Rome fan, so I want to see him out there. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that affects the offense overall as well. He had 4 targets for 1 catch, but like I said, you're not going to take much out of that. As far as an offense goes, you expect a lot better coming into week 2. But yeah, the Titans losing that one with how poor Chicago played on offense, and they just gave that game away.
It was the weirdest game. And I think because I'm such a sicko, I'm going to have to go back and watch it again and go, what actually happened in this? Because I still can't figure it out myself. So, another game, the next game that we're going to talk about now, this was a great game, but I still don't know anything about the teams in the sense like I think they're both going to be good, but I don't know how good they could be. And that's the Texans versus the Colts. Texans win 29-27. CJ Stroud had some incredible plays. Nico Collins came up huge on some plays. Anthony Richardson looked insane the way he backpedaled and threw off his back foot 60-odd yards for a touchdown. But then, you sort of look at some of these things and you think, well, Anthony Richardson missed Adonai Mitchell twice for touchdowns. If he connects on those, who knows what happens in terms of the way the rest of this game played. I think both of these teams actually could be playoff teams, and I do think they will be playoff teams, but I just don't know how good and how far they'll actually go. So CJ Stroud threw for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon, 30 carries for 159 yards and a touchdown. Nico Collins was the big receiver here, 6 catches for 117 yards, but Stephon Diggs gets the 6 catches, 33 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the Texans. When you look at the Colts, Anthony Richardson only had 9 completions, but he threw for 212 yards with two touchdowns, 1 pick. Jonathan Taylor had 48 rushing yards, Richardson had 56, and Alec Pierce was the big numbers there. 3 catches for 125 yards and 1 touchdown. And of course, as I mentioned before, the big touchdown went to Ashton Dulin, who had 1 catch for 54 yards and 1 touchdown. So once again, Anthony Richardson only 9 of 19 for 212 yards. I think the Colts are going to be good, but I don't know how good they're going to be. And this game didn't help me figure that out at all.
No, like you said, 9 of 19 for Anthony Richardson I don't think is going to happen all that often. But again, he hasn't had a lot of starts over his career. And obviously, he was out most of last year as well. So effectively, he's still a rookie in terms of games played, games started. So
yeah,
we're going to see those sloppy games from him where he's going to miss guys, and you don't want to see it too often. Like you said, the ones to Dono Mitchell were unfortunate because they could have been massive plays. But the positive thing was Alec Pierce got unleashed, and he's that deep threat that's going to be that player for Anthony Richardson. And if he's getting those targets and those completions consistently with his hands, then you're going to start to see Richardson be a lot more consistent, I think, overall. As long as he can start getting those sort of check downs and intermediate throws a lot more accurate, then he'll improve a lot as the season goes on. He's always going to be a threat with his feet as well, so we'll see better from him in the team overall. Jonathan Taylor didn't crack 50 yards, which I don't think they could get him going as much as they wanted to. They bottled him up fairly well, and I think that comes down a lot to the inconsistency of Anthony Richardson as well in that game.
Yeah, and I think too, look, I think until Anthony Richardson does have some more starts under his belt and can hit those shorter to intermediate routes, I don't think Michael Pittman's going to be much of a a factor. It feels like because I think he's got his guys that he could go to, like you said, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs when he's out there, Adonai Mitchell. Pittman will still get some targets, but I don't think he'll be as noticeable. I mean, and it also seems like too this is going to be one of those offenses where it's hard to figure out who that wide receiver is going to be week to week because it could be a new guy each week.
Yeah, and I think Josh Downs being out really affected those intermediate throws across the middle as well.
Yeah.
Like that's obviously where he wins a lot of his matchups. So once they get him back, the offense will look different as well. So yeah, one of those ones, like I said, can't take a lot from it. They're in the game right up to the end there, so they can take positives out of it.
Yeah. So we move on to the Sunday night football game. The Detroit Lions win 26-20 in overtime against the LA Rams. Big news coming out of that is for the Rams is Puka Nacua has gone down with a knee injury and is now gone on IR, so is missing the next 4 games, which will be a big blow for the Rams. Matthew Stafford, 317 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. That's a reason why I had him as my top 5 quarterbacks for rankings for this year. Kyron Williams had 18 rushes for 50 yards. The surprising thing was, to me, was Blake Corum did not have a single snap on offense for this entire game. So he's obviously going to be worked into this moving forward. I was expecting him to have a little bit of I guess, a role within this team. But when we look at the receiving, Tyler Johnson had 5 catches for 79 yards. But of course, the big one was Cooper Kupp is back in the sense of, well, he never left. He was just injured last year. But 14 catches, 110 yards, 1 touchdown, and was just Matthew Stafford targeted him 21 times of his. He had 49 passes and 21 targets were at Cooper Kupp. So that's just saying something. Like, he is going to target Cooper Kupp massively this season.
You talk about leaning on the guy you trust the most. That's what Matthew Stafford did to keep them in that game. So, with everything going wrong around them in the game, trust old Matthew Stafford and old Cooper Kupp.
Well, and then this is the crazy thing. So the Lions win. Jared Goff goes for 217 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 rushes, 40 yards, and 1 touchdown. And David Montgomery, 17 rushes for 91 yards and a touchdown, including the game winner. But the big thing to come out of this was Jameson Williams' breakout game. 5 catches, 121 yards, but he had 9 targets. I don't know if it felt like most of the season last year, it felt like at stages, Jameson Williams didn't have 9 targets over about 4 games. But yet he was targeted 9 times in this one game. Sam Laporta gets targeted 5 times for 4 catches and 45 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs has 34 receiving yards on 4 catches. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 3 catches on 6 targets for 13 yards, which was the biggest surprise out of everything. So it was just one of those games where it was, even though it wasn't as high scoring as some of these other ones, it was a fun game to watch to see the back and forth and how everyone dealt with everything. And I think this Detroit team is going to be really good. And I think everyone might actually have to worry that who didn't have the Rams in their playoffs, which I did, even without Puka Nacua, because he was out for most of that game. The Rams are still going to be a really tough out all season long.
Yeah, it makes that division really interesting with 49ers, Cardinals as well. So it's going to be a battle all season long there. Matthew Stafford played well. Obviously, losing Puka's massive, but I do believe I called a bit of a Jameson Williams breakout game, and he didn't let me down. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 targets, 3 catches, 13. I don't think we're going to see that again all season. I'd expect him to have a massive bounce back next week.
I was going to say, I think it's going to be one of those things that I don't know if Amon-Ra is going to go into the team facility and throw his hands up in the air and kick up a big stink, but I think it's going to be one of those things that they are going to manufacture so many targets for him next week. So I think he could be one of those ones where he ends up with a 15, 20 target game and just goes ballistic because
Yeah,
he didn't have the game that anyone was expecting him to this week.
yeah.
So
Lions going to be a good team all year. They can rely on that
yeah,
running game.
yeah, they've got two really good running backs and a great offensive line. Moving on to the game that we saw today, the Monday Night Football game, the San Francisco 49ers win 32 to the New York Jets 19. Brock Purdy, 231 yards passing. Deebo Samuel has a rushing touchdown, but the big notice there, Jordan Mason starts for the injured Christian McCaffrey, has 28 rushes for 147 yards and one touchdown. And they mentioned on the broadcast that he had not had that many carries even in his college career in a game. So this is the most carries he's had since probably high school. He was an absolute stud and a star in this game. For the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, 167 yards, one touchdown, one interception. Breece Hall had 54 yards on 16 carries and one touchdown. Alan Lazard had 6 catches for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is not a surprise because he's there because Aaron Rodgers informed the Jets that he was playing for them. I don't think the Jets had much of a choice. Aaron Rodgers had informed him that he was there. Garrett Wilson, 6 catches, 60 yards on 11 targets. Breece Hall then also had 39 receiving yards on 5 catches there. I think this just a lot of people were saying, oh, it's the 49ers are going to have the year from hell because of the Super Bowl. I don't think that's the case, and I think they proved it today that they are going to be a force to be reckoned with, and they're only going to get better when Christian McCaffrey comes back.
Yeah, like the 49ers, I've said it all along. They've got this season basically to win it all before they need to make some really tough decisions. Like they said on the broadcast today about the annual average salary of some of their players and where they ranked among their position group, and a lot of them were like top 1, 2, 3 sort of thing. So a lot of decisions are going to have to be made over the off season, but for this year, they're going to be right there again as Super Bowl contenders. And this game especially, nothing changed that. Their defense is
No.
elite, can be elite. Like Aaron Rodgers looked like he hadn't played for 12 months.
Yeah.
And then like the interception off him, that was just incredible play by the defensive back there
Mm.
to be able to make that
Yeah.
play. So Rodgers will get a lot more clean, a lot better as the season goes on. We know he's going to target Wilson. Lazard's going to be there. Mike Williams didn't get involved. So once he gets back up to speed a lot more, I think will be a massive boost for the offense as well. But you look at the 49ers, Brock Purdy, no touchdowns, but he didn't need to. They
No.
lent on the running game. Debo with 8 carries as well, just to spell Jordan Mason. Again, Juwan Jennings is my smoky for a touchdown. He did everything but catch a touchdown, so
Yeah.
he was quite involved in the passing game. So they've just got so many ways that they can beat you.
And I mean, you know, Brandon Ayuk, the newest big money signing at wide receiver, and he barely was noticeable out on the field. And so they've just got so many ways that they can beat you. And if Jordan Mason's going to be putting up numbers like that, if Christian McCaffrey's still that little bit doubtful, then the 49ers don't actually have to rush him back. They can go,
Yeah,
okay, well, let's just put Jordan Mason in. We've just seen what he's able to do, and that's where Kyle Shanahan just has this wizardry of taking undrafted guys and turning them into absolutely quality running backs.
yeah. We saw his dad do it, Mike Shanahan, all through his career as
Mm,
well. Like, there's just something about the Shanahans and the way they set up their running game with the way the offensive line just dominates as well and opens up those massive holes. So,
mm.
yeah, again, they're going to be a scary team once they start clicking into full gear as well.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that I reckon it could be a repeat of last year's NFC Championship game if everyone stays healthy. It's going to be the Lions versus the 49ers is my early prediction of where that NFC Championship game is going to end up, just because they look like two of the better teams. Like they look like two of the best teams the way they were playing. So So that is our week 1 review there. We're just going to quickly do the Thursday night football game because the next time that you hear Dan and I will be after this Thursday night football game has happened. So we are going to do our picks and touchdown scorers for this one as well. So Miami is home to Buffalo. Miami is currently favorites at $1.83 to the Bills $2.02. The over-under for this game is 48.5, and Miami are 1.5 point favorites here on the spread. So just off of that, Dan, who are you sort of thinking of leaning on this in this game so far based off of week 1 of the season?
I think being at home, I think I'm going with Miami just at this point in time. They didn't look good, but that also means they've got so much room for improvement as well. So it's going to be one of those games that come the end of the season, this could be that defining factor for both teams, which way it goes. I know it's week 2 and it seems ridiculous to say that, but whoever wins this game could really catapult their season. So
Yeah.
for a Thursday night game, this is going to be one of the best we see. And we saw, obviously, Baltimore and Kansas City
Yeah.
last week. It's pretty decent way to start the season off on Thursday night, isn't it?
It is. It is 2 really good games back-to-back weeks on a Thursday night. I am currently really torn over this because I think if you look on paper, the Dolphins have the better team on paper. But I'm also very aware that as of like they were last season, they weren't able to beat the teams who ended up being playoff teams and that were above 500. They just couldn't beat anyone. It didn't matter who they were. If you were above 500, it felt like the Dolphins weren't able to get close or win in those important games. So you sort of want to lean Buffalo in that sense too. I think as at the moment, and because we've got our pick'ems pool and we don't put our picks in right until the last minute. As of right now, I'm actually leaning Buffalo in this. Now that might change between now and when the game starts, but as of right now, I think I'm leaning Buffalo just because I don't know Miami if they're able to win those big important games when they really should be able to.
I'll tell you what I'm going to give you that I don't think I'll change come the game time. And that's a 38-35 scoreline.
Yeah.
That's
I that's the thing. I think it's just going to be high scoring, and it's going to be one of those things where maybe the last person who has the ball last wins. And it's going to come down to whether they score or whether the defense stops them. And that's sort of where I'm leaning at this. Where I am leaning, and this isn't going to change between now and then, are my 2 touchdown scorers that I've put for this. And I'm going the chalkiest of chalk picks that you can go in this. But I don't think that Buffalo can win without Josh Allen scoring a touchdown. And we saw, he scored 2 of them against Arizona. And I don't think Miami has the chance to win. Well, they do have the chance to win because they've got so many good players on offense. But I think they have a better chance of winning if Tyreek Hill scores. So my 2 touchdown scorers for this are Josh Allen and Tyreek Hill.
Okay, so I'm going to give you somebody that did almost nothing for Buffalo in week 1. Only saw 2 targets, 1 reception for 11 yards. I think we're going to see a bigger game this week from Dalton Kincaid, and I think he gets a touchdown this week. And he may even get 2 just quietly. For Miami, I am tipping, as long as he plays, I think there's a bit of talk about Miami running backs being banged up a little bit. But I'd expect Devon Achane to play, and I think Achane will get a receiving touchdown this game. Not that we need to differentiate touchdowns, but I just think it's going to be a receiving touchdown and probably a rushing touchdown as well.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't be surprised with all 4 guys we've just named if they all get 2 touchdowns. It seems like it could be one of those types of.
I'm going to put it out there if I can quickly Google while you just keep talking, but because, like you said, we're not going to be back on air until after this game, I am going to put down that Dalton Kincaid and Devon Achan both score 2 touchdowns.
Like I said, that wouldn't shock me whatsoever. Currently, when I did this, we looked this up. There weren't any odds up at the moment for touchdown scorers. There are now. So
I was going to
looking
say,
at
should
this now,
update now after the game today.
yeah. So looking at now, so Josh Allen is $1.84 for a touchdown. Tyreek Hill's $1.85. Devon Achan is $2.12, and Dalton Kincaid is $3.25 for that. I just want to see, since we're looking at this, if you're going to go 2+ touchdowns, Josh Allen's $4.50. Dalton Kincaid's $12.50 for 2 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill's $4.90, and Devon Achan is $5.90. So if you were going to go, Dan, for your 2 guys that you picked to go 2 touchdowns, that would, both of them combined would be $93.50 if they both scored 2 touchdowns.
Yeah,
If
give
I
me
pick,
that.
if I pick mine, it's $25 for the 2 of them combined. Then if we chuck in all 4 just for the sake of it, the fun of it, the odds for all 4, as I'm looking at it, is $426. So 426 to 1 if all 4 guys score. Actually, it won't even let me put 4 guys scoring 2 touchdowns each. That just shows how the odds are working over here. So for us to, so you'd have to eliminate. So that's just for 3. So that's going Josh
Hang
Allen,
on. Oh,
Tyreek Hill,
yeah.
Devon Achan. If I take Devon Achan
Doesn't
out
either, does
and
it?
go, nah. If I go Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achan, it's $526. So 526 to 1. And then if we take Josh Allen out altogether, so it would be Tyreek Hill, Devon Achan, Dalton Kincaid, all to score 2 touchdowns. It's 601 to 1.
I'm in the market for a new car, so I might have just found my way to get a new car.
Go $5 on Tyreek, Dalton Kincaid, and Devon Achan to score 2 touchdowns each. You put $5 on that, you'll be up $3,500 there, Dan. At
Just, yeah, I'm
601 to 1. There you
just
go.
looking at this. I like this.
Sorry, it'd be
This is the way to do it. Yeah, I was going to say,
3,000.
yeah.
3,000.
So $5 on that, 3,000. That'll go nicely towards
A new car.
I won't say a new car, a used car, but a new car for me.
A new
Yeah.
used car.
A new used car. Which I'll tell you what.
It's tempting, isn't it? Look,
I
if
mean,
there's going to be a
$5
game,
for
if there's
that.
going to
If
be,
you're listening to this, somebody
yeah,
other than me, because I'm actually doing this, somebody other than me, just go put $5 on that, and you can thank me when it shows up. Thank Brad as well, because his Bills Miami players are in there as well, and Bills players. But that's
I think
funny though.
that would be, if that actually comes through, then I think we just might have to turn this into just a gambling podcast, and let's not worry about the actual games. We're just turning this straight to gambling if we hit on that. No, so this is going to be maybe one of the better games of the season too. These 2 teams, the way that they're
Yeah.
playing. All I can say is, after going through all of that, is I am so glad football is back. I am pumped for the rest of the season. We're 1 week in. The countdown's on, Dan. There's only 17 weeks of the regular season left. So we better make...
It's too quick.
Yeah, I know. It's too quick. But if you're anything like Dan and myself, you're listening to this, you'll be thinking the same sort of thing. This is just... We're pumped for this season. Week 1's already thrown some massive curveballs, and we can't wait to see what comes through in the following weeks. You got anything else to add, Dan, before we get out of here for this episode?
I was just we're talking about what we're going to put on the $5 on this bet. We should say gamble responsibly.
Yeah.
But a little $5 bet on that is pretty damn responsible if you ask me. So, but yeah, look, we're here to have some fun. Obviously talk about NFL. What's more fun than that, to be honest? But let's hope we get a lot more better games than what we did this week to be able to talk about come next week. But we'll obviously preview a lot of the rest of them as well on our next show. But should be some exciting games.
There should be. And if you do feel like joining in with Dan and myself, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Dan at beard_82. You can find me at BradBolt1. And you can find the whole Optimus Fantasy team at Optimus Fantasy. What you will also see is you will see another episode coming from us at the end of this week where we will be previewing the remainder of the week 1 games. We'll give our picks, our touchdown scorers, and our favourite bets. On
And I will
those,
just say, just quickly, we did it this week or last week before the games. We'll do it again every week. Jump on Twitter and you'll see a massive thread from us where we're picking who we think is going to score touchdowns. Jump on Twitter, jump on that thread. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know who you're picking as your touchdown scorers as well.
So we went week 1 and we did a list of our guys and where we thought their stat lines were going to add up, what we were sort of hoping for. Now, granted, we were probably, one of us here who picked the Carolina Panthers to win was expecting Bryce Young to have a very good game. But what it is, though, is we are just doing some of this for a lot of fun. So we want to try and get you guys involved. We want to hear what you're thinking for some of these. So if we come in this game and obviously with Jordan Love out injured and Malik Willis maybe starting.
He may not be.
Well,
I'm expecting he is. But...
I'm expecting he is. But if he's out and Malik Willis is there, if Dan comes in and says he's expecting for Malik Willis to throw for 425 yards and 8 touchdowns, and you think he's a little psychotic for thinking that, then please go in and say, "Hey Dan, I think you're over your skis a little bit there, man." But we want you guys to join in with us so you can see. It's just a bit of fun between Dan and myself. We go back and forth, and it's just saying, well, here's some of our options why we might like these guys, and if you actually went through that thread and you picked the guys that we had scoring touchdowns, I think we hit on a fair few guys there that we thought were going to score there. So it's something for you guys to, like we said, you guys to join in, have fun with, and we'll do it every single week, and we will try and see what we do and how close we can get to some of those stat lines as the season rolls on. So
always up for a bit of fun.
Exactly. So on behalf of Dan and myself, we look forward to seeing you guys all on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to the Optimus NFL show, your ultimate home of football, transforming the way you watch the game. Bye for now.